I would like to preface this review by saying that if Spring Song is ever released in Japan by the time this is out, and there also happens to be a subtitled cam rip online that one could download and watch, I haven't seen it. In fact, I will never see it until I watch the film by official means. I don't want to know the direction they ended up taking it with. Despite already knowing what happens from reading the novel, I don't even want to know what exactly happens in the film version of the events that transpire. Just like Lost Butterfly before it, I want to go in blind, and if you tell me anything in regards to things like differences, additions, omissions, and whatever else the film does with Heaven's Feel's final moments, any goodwill from you, whether as a viewer or as a possible acquaintance, will diminish. You will be dead to me. Understand? So as you watch this, pretend that Spring Song hasn't been released in any way, shape, or good, because hey, another Fate video! Never made those before. It's almost as if I'm intentionally ignoring any of those past videos relating to Fate in order to make a sarcastic joke, which is just silly. After all, sarcasm is the lowest form of wit, and I'm totally over that and will indulge in nothing short of the highest quality of humorous remarks. Thoughts! Thoughts everywhere! In fact, Heaven's Feel has one. No. Skirt's a bit short, but no. Hell no. I'd bang her. Fuck off! She's not even in Fate. Hell, probably not even the same timeline as Fate. Maybe, I don't know. The Nasuverse is as confusing as it is intriguing. Sure, why not? She looks like one anyway. Okay, let's step back a bit and take things more seriously for a beat. I'm making no secret that the Fate series is my chosen fandom, starting with the anime, reading the visual novel, and now consider myself not to be a secondary, but a third class. Yeah! I'm not an expert on everything Nasuverse. Haven't even finished Tsukihime for fuck's sake, but damn it, Fate Stay Night is one of the best things I've ever read, and expert or not, I do love talking about the Nasuverse whenever I've done streams. Yes, it's even better than Katawa Shoujo, and that thing featured girls who can't hear and speak or see or have arms to so much as defend themselves in any real capacity. Every Japanese businessman who rides a train's ideal paradise. I already made a long, drawn-out, multi-part but was originally meant to be a single video review and analysis of the Fate Stay Night visual novel, and have already talked about the damn thing so many times for comfort, I'm sure, but you know what? Fuck it. Fate is a subject I'm mostly comfortable with. Assuming we don't talk about Apocrypha, or Extra, or Grand Order, or the strange fake light novel I haven't read, or Prisma Elia because I haven't watched it in a long time or read the manga, or the other spin-offs I may or may not have watched or read or played or listened to because I don't know Japanese, or whatever the hell Prototype was going to be. Basically, keep it to Stay Night, and I'll be right as rain. Wow. I'm realizing more and more that I don't know as much as I originally thought. In comes the adaptation of my favorite route of said visual novel, which was announced as a film trilogy. Initially disappointing because Heaven's Feel really does warrant the benefits being a TV series could have afforded it, being almost primed for it. I mean, dude, Ufotable or Type Moon or whoever the fuck decides this crap effectively skipped the Fate route, which has its own problems, but you'd think the route with the most twists, turns, and the most serious of tonal shifts would be a TV anime. It's practically made for all the hallmarks. Heaven's Feel is one big target for end-of-episode cliffhangers. I think that's my first gripe with these two films, really. Being a TV series would have been preferred. The amount of material of the original rendition, the things they ultimately cut out or trimmed down from these films in order to fit the core plot in and everything else in between, being a TV show would have remedied whatever flaws these films have for the most part, though I'll delve into this later on. If anything, Unlimited Blade Works has more reasons to be like a two-part film series than Heaven's Feel being a trilogy. What with it being the shortest route and all, I actually would have liked Ufotable's Blade Works more if it was shorter and focused and tried less to add these little bits of the Fate route as if trying to replace it, and this is something for a completely different review entirely. Seriously, just make a readaptation of the Fate route already. But don't get the wrong idea. Regardless of the decision to make Heaven's Feel films rather than the series, I can say that I like them on their own terms, what with the creative choices taken with them having merits that I can say are for good, even if there are also some I can't help but see as an objective detriment, whatever objectivity means here on the anime outsider anyway. Without resorting to major spoilers for Spring Song that anyone who's watched me for a while may or may not already know, Presage Flower and Lost Butterfly are a case where their standing as adaptations is interesting to say the least. It's enough to cut things out, and boy do these cut stuff out of the route, but it's a case where I now know how Harry Potter fans feel, not only adding material previously non-existent, but rearranging plot points as well, usually to compensate for what it omits. This isn't as straightforward like previous Fate Stay Night adaptations where things are linearly arranged, but more like Ufotable hired a story DJ and outright remixed Heaven's Feel in its entirety. This is where the Heaven's Feel films, thus far anyway, make for something I can't entirely talk about with ease. They meet some expectations, surpass others, but when it disappoints, it does so harder than BioShock Infinite.
Come on! Are you gonna throw it? Or are you taking your coffee black these days?
And not even the gratuitous action scenes can help in these instances. I guess I should finally start talking about the topic at hand in order to stop babbling like a moron with a concussion. Heaven's Feel, as I said, is my favorite route of the novel for numerous reasons, but without literally reciting an almost 1 hour video, it's where it starts listening to goth music and talks about how the world sucks and wants to kill itself, which is to say, it's the most nihilistic route of the bunch. Even if the ending does have meaning and caps off Stay Night's overall message, at least it does in the novel, again, Spring Song ain't out yet as of the writing of this, the developments of the previous two routes conclude in the story where the ambiguity is at its apex, the characters are pushed harder than they ever were before, the tone is at its heaviest, the themes are at their heaviest, and the exploration of Shiro's idealism, the crux of Fate Stay Night overall, meets pitfalls when said ideals that carried him in Fate and Unlimited Blade Works completely fail, but I won't spoil anything Spring Song will likely tackle for those unfamiliar with the story, or at least with its ending, or rather, endings. Sakura is the main heroine this time around, and where she was a side character who didn't have any real relevance in other routes, we are thrust into the fray as far as learning exactly what kind of person she truly is, and why, crest worms and all. Shiro just really wants to save her, but man, dude, come on, there's gotta be a limit somewhere. Yeah, he doesn't give a fuck. Okay, scratch that, he gives all the fucks. For the most part, the first two Heaven's Feel films are faithful at their core. What I said as far as themes, character arcs, and any other gobbledygook from my video about the novel translate here, granted with some caveats that are hard to ignore. Indeed, the plot aspect is handled pretty well considering they're cramming in the second longest route in terms of word count into just 3 films. But what's even more impressive is the tone for both of these. They captured the grimness of Heaven's Feel remarkably well, to the point where I can say that this is how it feels reading the novel version, truly showcasing the brutality, drama, angst, and the horror, and oh god, the horror is so well visually translated here, grotesque and all. If Fate 2006 is the most faithful in terms of adapting the novel's slice-of-life element and the general tone when our characters are allowed room to express themselves and play off of each other, Heaven's Feel is most faithful truthful where the dark sides of the story are concerned, when everything can just go wrong on more than one level. As I said in my review series, Kinoko Nasu's horror writing is what partly made Fate Stay Night the roller coaster that it is, and with Heaven's Feel being the most reliant on this side of the material, I can't help but give props to Tomonori Sudo and the rest of the team at Ufotable who worked on these films in regards to capturing the tension, as well as their original contributions that are quite unique, feeling natural when considering the medium Heaven's Feel is now in. As disappointing as the original announcement that Heaven's Feel was going to be a film trilogy was back in the day, I cannot say the results have been overall negative. Far from it, in fact. But what flaws these do have, not only as adaptations but as films on their own grounds, can only be explained on a per installment basis, which is what I'll proceed to dig into now. Presage Flower came first, what with it releasing in 2017, oh Jesus, it's been that long? And it's solid, very solid, adapting, or rather remixing the first third of the story. In fact, I'll just say remix rather than adapt going forward because that's a more apt descriptor for this entire film trilogy as a whole. Presage Flower hits the core beats, but something is also lost along the way which comes around to affect the second film and how it handles a certain relationship, which was very important in the novel. What we got here is a retelling that's as much of an introduction to the darker tone and direction as it is the introduction to the story for the uninitiated, though not to Stay Night in general. If anything, the film assumes you're already familiar with the setup, seven masters summoning heroic spirits from history and mythology, from the throne of heroes and duking it out for the Holy Grail, and you know what, how many times have I reiterated Fate Stay Night's premise? I'm not so much a broken record as I am a record that's possessed by a demon who likes annoying people. Fuck it, I'm just going to put the obligatory plot synopsis on screen for a bit. You get all that? Good, because you kinda need to at least know that much if this is your introduction to Fate Stay Night, to which I say, you poor, poor soul. Though it's not like the film is concerned about accessibility. The premise is basically skimmed over at the outset as they reuse Unlimited Bladeworks footage in the title credits because yes, that show really did look that great, and the fact it holds up seamlessly against an anime film with an anime film budget and production time years after it aired says volumes about Ufotable's talents as a studio, regardless of tax evasion allegations. But what isn't skimmed over is the relationship of Shiro and Sakura, which is established at the start as a priority in a way that's actually superior to the novel. There, how these two met and came to grow their bond is talked about through text and maybe one or two CGs, but the film elects to take full utilization of the fact that it's now fully animated and drawn in front of our eyeballs, leading to the first original contribution. A prologue where we get to see how Shiro and Sakura meet, how the bond started, and where it goes leading up to the events of Stay Night, which is my first praise. This was probably needed after all. As far as the anime goes, Sakura was very much a secondary player in everything, so to finally flesh out the relationship even beyond what the visual novel did with this whole prologue sequence is a stroke of good decision making, I'd say. Not only does it give those familiar with the VN new content that expands on the material in a way that matters, those who aren't are given a fuller view of just how deep the bond really is. It satisfies either way, and you're going to need to understand Shiro's relationship to Sakura to really grip onto the stakes, since Presage Flower seems more like a light downpour of hail before the hurricane. Which is to say that not much of what makes Heaven's Feel hit so hard is actually present here. That doesn't come until Lost Butterfly. After multiple viewings, this is pretty much the establishment of the rest of the story, though this guarantees that this first chapter is the weakest of the two as a result. Not least of which is also partly the fault of Ufotable cutting down, or rather omitting one of the most important elements of Heaven's Feel from this first film. The bond between Shiro and Elia. Yeah, Ilia was meant to have a bigger presence in this slice of Heavensfeel. In the novel, she reappears sometime after the initial battle with Saber and Berserker, and much like the Fate route, they start conversing and hanging out a bit, all casual-like. Unlike the Fate route, however, this is a major piece of the puzzle, so to speak, as one of Heavensfield's objectives is to make you care about Shiro and Ilia's bond as to grip you for what comes later on. At one point, the reader is given the option to invite Ilia to Shiro's home, leading to her having a new perspective on his life as an individual, both past and present, and slowly but surely, this turns her perception of him, less willing to actually kill him off as revenge against Kiritsugu. That's just one way Ilia's character arc is achieved, and Presage Flower just cuts it out entirely. In fact, just about everything relating to Shiro and Ilia's bond is missing after the Saber versus Berserker fight. She just outright disappears and only returns at the very end for a brief time and doesn't have a real presence until the next film, where they do attempt to compensate for the fact they cut out so much of their moments together. But with what they cut out, it just isn't enough. There just isn't enough time to successfully do so, and this aspect is one of my concerns when it comes to Spring Song. Without spoiling, the final act of Heavensfeel is very much dependent on having a connection toward Ilia on the part of the reader. You have to understand just why Shiro would care so much for Ilia beyond sheer idealism and wanting to be a hero, and the lesson time they have together thus far doesn't instill confidence. I hope Spring Song addresses this with original content or something, because even Lost Butterfly is guilty of cutting essential bonding scenes, and one of them just so happens to be one of my favorite scenes in the novel as a whole. That being said, the rest is pretty solid throughout. Though his ideals aren't curb-stomped until the sequel, Presage Flower does a good job of showcasing just how weak Shiro really is in the more down-to-earth and harder-hitting direction of Heavensfeel. Where idealism got him through the days in other routes, it's loss after loss here, and no amount of hero complexing will stop the fact that a dark power, a shadow, is beginning to go on the prowl. People die, servants die, and by the end, he even becomes servantless in one of the worst moments. Depressing for any Saber fan such as I, and it only gets worse from here. Things are made all the more complicated when Sakura becomes a greater focus than before, which also means Zoken is introduced, even if he doesn't really do much aside from being an asshole villain man in this film. This also means that Shinji gets the spotlight, and anyone who knows the route can see where he goes as a character, and by that I mean he's a fucking asshole, dickhead, motherfucker, bitch-ass shitbag with no redeeming qualities whatsoever, more so than other routes. From the outset, he's just on the farthest end of the spectrum of evil douchebag than any other incarnation in the same visual novel or anime adaptation due to Heavensfeel letting its punches fly. No doubt about it, this route has its restrictions lessened to a point where it dares to go places previously unexplored.
And you can't let go because you want to keep getting laid, right?
Bastard!
Oh yeah, boy, and yes, I'm using the English audio for the sake of convenience in editing. I'll do what I want. But going back to Sakura, her being the main heroine leads to developments and revelations only this route can conceivably tackle, if only because it has the gloves off and is going in raw, and by the end of Lost Butterfly, it can make you wonder why Shiro even tried to bother. Those who saw my review of the novel version of Heavensfeel know what I'm getting at, but those who are anime only still get a slice of what development in this first film is to be expanded on later. She's way more proactive here, what with being a major player in the events yet to be remixed, but the amount of screen time she's given already separates her from past depictions in anime form. We get closer as an audience as she finally opens up to us, getting the opportunity to do so after going through through adaptations that left her in the dark as simply being a cute anime kohai girl Shiro was already friendly with, to now being a point of importance beyond genuine friendship. The backstory, the drama, the comedy, the bonding, all stemming from her, and the growing importance of her role that leads our protagonist down the rabbit hole. Again, the prologue content Ufotable added was a net positive all around, because without the leash it previously had holding it back, it easily leads to the best route of Fate Stay Night as a result of letting it all go. We've had drama, we've had violence, we've had comedy, and we still get that, but there was always a certain thing, in anime form anyway, that was always missing, and while unimportant in Fate and Unlimited Blade works, turns out to be paramount to Heaven's Feel in particular. Allegorically, symbolically, metaphors and all.
How would you feel if you were an almond and some random dude came up to you and started squeezing your almond titties?
Sex was something I was expecting to be omitted or heavily downplayed for the films, and was convinced it would actually be until this moment, even if the scene is simply him grabbing them titties. Now, anyone who's spent more than 2 minutes doing research is aware the novel did have sex scenes, but where they were tactless and unintentionally hilarious in the other routes,
her anus is defenseless.
Heaven's Feel makes it a point, in some ways that are actually spoilers for those who don't want any. Suffice to say, I was expecting Ufotable to go real to Nua, just like Unlimited Blade works before it, and even previous adaptations before that with Fate 2006 and Deed's Blade Works, which would have been highly disappointing if that were the case. The subject is not only connected to Shiro's overall arc throughout the plot, while with his love for Sakura actually leading him to betraying his ideals and thus leading to his own moral downfall considering the circumstances and what they all mean in context. But the general symbolic metaphor of Heaven's Feel would have been absolutely ruined if they real to Nua the whole thing, which they didn't. Thank God. I know the whole just add sex thing I'm going with sounds minor when I say it, but with what meaning Heaven's Feel is imbued with in subtext, especially with Lost Butterfly laying it home even further with the whole angle of Sakura being this violated, broken, and vindictive person underneath her smiles coming into Heaven's Feel, this is major. Believe me when I say that if they had omitted sexuality from the plot, the rest would be much weaker. So Presage Flower starts off on the right foot aside from a lot of Elia cutting, and some decisions that aren't always serious. Certain plot elements happen at different points, or are revised for the film for the sake of compartmentalizing. The Mappo Tofu scene, for example, happens earlier in the novel than the film, though I chalk this up to the fact that they cut out Elia's bonding scenes. This scene with Shiro and Sakura in the shed does happen in the novel, but they also find a way to fit in a conversation they have within the first 3 days of the story about how she came to admire him. This scene with Castor and Soichiro is different, but I actually like what they did here in the film. In the novel, Shiro and Saber just go on patrol and head to Ryudo Temple and see Castor all bloody and traumatized, likely from Soichiro being murdered in front of her eyes, and Saber promptly slays her. It's a bit quick, though it sort of worked due to it being text-based and the descriptions did convey an unsettling effect that layered mystery. But when it came to the film, Ufotable clearly took the opportunity to take better advantage of the medium than simply ripping the scene as it was originally to do their own thing. What with True Assassin manifesting and attacking Soichiro and puts Castor in this really tense standoff. She has honest-to-God stakes in this scene, what with her love for the guy and tries to save him, but the attempt ultimately falls to shit, much like the rest of the events of Heaven's Feel. Soichiro even gets executed ninja gangsta style. That's edgy as fuck! This new take on the scene is a neat reworking, and unlike the novel version, it doesn't feel like a super casual, anticlimactic sort of affair that happens and yeah, time to move on. As a novel reader, there's more to talk about, and this is only a few examples of positive changes, or at least changes I liked in some way. The action is top-notch shit, both here and in Lost Butterfly. This whole action scene with Lancer and True Assassin was of a much shorter scale in the novel, but is super epic in the film. what was Ufotable's signature top-grade presentation. Unlimited Blade Works was already an exemplary visual powerhouse from the studio, as I already talked about when mentioning just how seamless it can fit with this film. But speaking of Heaven's Feel, this is yet another step up to a greater level. Beautiful vistas, excellent implementations of digital augmentation applied to effects and the 2D artwork, CG use being expertly mixed, and coloring having shading and definition that Ufotable make all their own. Their take on Fate Stay Night's action scenes were always spectacular in Blade Works, and Heaven's Feel is no different, with what action we do get in Presage Flower usually living up to what was originally described in text form as far as the capabilities servants truly possess. That fight between Saber and Lancer in the first episode of Ufotable's Blade Works absolutely captures what the novel was trying to convey in terms of energy and scale, and while action scenes here in Heaven's Feel tend to play out differently than the novel counterparts, they nonetheless impress, even if they do go overboard at times. I'll get to that. Ufotable used that time and movie budget like kings, sparing no expense as usual, even with the alleged tax evasion. This finally leads me into where Heaven's Feel truly takes off, with Lost Butterfly. I'm aware that as far as talking about characters are concerned, I was holding back. This is mostly due to Presage Flower not having much for me to really talk about in that aspect. Not much to say about Reen, whose role is very much on the supporting side than anything. Ryder is wasted, then comes back to kick some serious ass at the end, and Saber is such a non-character really, as she is in other routes besides her own. Again, please adapt the Fate route. A Ufotable, you tone-deaf, tax-evading bastards, though I still love your efforts. Her battle with Berserker was as awesome as it was short, and that original scene with Alter was neat-ish, but God, my waifu is really boring when the story isn't about her. However, Lost Butterfly is where the downward spiral really hits the shit fan. That statement felt wrong somehow. At last, the plot thickens like Shiro's Blade Works. Lost Butterfly gets the ball rolling by adapting the encounter with Shinji at the school, which is a great way of starting things. The sequence is just exciting from beginning to end, again proving Ufotable's creativity by changing the location from the school hallway in the novel to the library, taking full advantage of the setting to make some real crowd-pleasing moments. Dude, Shiro reinforced a book and used it like a shield, and Ryder hit it to launch him like a rocket so he can Superman punch Shinji like a big dick Chad beast. That's some real creative juices you got there, Ufotable. But alas, it isn't long before the drama begins, as the dark power within Sakura begins to manifest due to the ways of the Mato and their methods of upbringing, implanting crestworms at a young age that slowly kill her in order for Zoken to create his version of the Greater Grail to fulfill his own selfish desire for immortality. This all comes to a head when the true relations between Reen and Sakura are completely revealed, which is super shocking if you haven't watched Fate Zero, or read about it online, or was spoiled by a douchebag who brought it up casually, or just straight up read the damn novel. Yeah, it's hard to be surprised by the Fate franchise sometimes, but this already increases the high stakes to new levels, as not only does Shiro's arc for the rest of Heaven's Feel revolve around Sakura's fate, Reen's character is tested when it's revealed that Sakura is her little sister that was adopted by the Mato. What a shock! Yes, if you couldn't tell already, I'm reviewing this as if someone who's watching isn't familiar with the visual novel, to which I just spoiled one of the biggest twists of the story and will now commit seppuku. The girl we knew in the past embraces the side of herself who will do whatever it takes, even if it means killing her own sister, to prevent the world's destruction at the hands of the Shadow and the broader corrupted power associated with it that I won't spoil because Spring Song isn't out yet. Oh yeah, Ilya's back and she's super friendly all of a sudden. It's almost as if scenes of her bonding with Shiro were cut out or something. Lost Butterfly's other objective is to make up for the lost time with Ilya from Presage Flower, and it's not a total failure, to be fair. The scenes we do have with her tend to be endearing enough, I guess. The scene with her in the park as Shiro tries to find Sakura after what went down at the school was well done, even with her overall screen time being shortened, though this could be because I already experienced what her role was in the novel. She's intended to be the guide to ensure Shiro doesn't truly lose his way as the plot drags him down a path of tragedy and pain, and they attempt to keep that. Ufotable even goes so far as to create an entirely original scene that, I'll admit, I wish was in the novel itself, that not only reintroduces Taiga back into the story to confirm she's still alive, even with everything going wrong. In the novel, she was pretty much absent at this point, but it concretely confirms to Ilya that no, Kiritsugu didn't abandon her, but simply couldn't see her because of the Ainsburns putting a barrier between them. It works in the sense that not only does it connect this to Fate Zero more, but within the confines of the film, as an attempt to compensate for cut bonding scenes, it gives Ilya a new reason to change her mind on the vengeful desire against Shiro that, if it were combined with what Ufotable omitted, actually does a better job at explaining her character shift than the novel did. But only if the cut bonding scenes were left in. Unfortunately, Lost Butterfly makes even more cuts to the original material, and it can range from inconsequential, admittedly, to downright disappointing to absolutely fist-shakingly rage-inducing. God damn it. The plot is still recognizable and just as engaging. Yeah. But you know when I said that Ufotable's Heaven's Feel is more of a remix than an adaptation? Lost Butterfly fits this more than the first film, as it continues to rearrange, rework, add, and delete elements of the story, but on a more substantial scale than Presage Flower due to there being more material to work with. The drama gets kicked up. Shiro is faced with a dilemma where to save the world and uphold his idealism, he must kill the one he loves. And the scenes between him and Sakura as she gradually falls more and more toward her deepest, darkest desires and is embracing her true nature just drive home how much he's sacrificing to protect her. Any further and he'd become a villain in his own right. His morality is just not working anymore. From here, and in the previous film, they stick the landing in making us care for such a development where there's no clear answer as to how a good end can be achieved, just like the novel. But this isn't without compromise as films. A number of things were prioritized over other aspects in how events play out. While the Berserker vs. Salter sequence is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the supreme highlights of the film, with Ufotable flexing their action muscles going for a fight of grand scale, intensity, pace, and wow moments, and looking incredible all the while, it sure goes on and on and on to the point where something like this can take up runtime we could have spent on further plot development. Remember when I said Ufotable can go too overboard with their action scenes? This is probably one of the more blatant examples of their overindulgence, as not only is this whole sequence an overexpansion of how the encounter played out in the novel, important scenes had to be cut for moments like these to even fit within the limited runtime. And considering Stay Night has always been more of a drama than an action piece, the more time we have to characters, the better. It's understandable to abridge the scene where Kirei has a monologue about his past and true nature as a person. The whole thing was basically a wall of text. But the scene at the church where it's explained that Kirei implanted Archer's arm, the seal, and explains to Shiro how it all works? In the film, Archer cuts his arm off to save Shiro's life after being severely injured by the shadow, cuts to black, and we skip to Shiro and company arriving back at the Emiya estate with the seal already implanted. The explanations are tossed onto Rin now because Who else is gonna explain the arm seal? Who even gave him the thing anyway, Kirei? We don't see him do so, otherwise Rin wouldn't be the one to explain it. Better yet, what about the scene in the aftermath of this church scene where Shiro, Rin, and Ilya walk home together? That was yet another scene that helped to further establish Shiro's bond to Ilya, but that's omitted entirely. We just skip to Shiro's home now? Really? Speaking of Ilya, why the hell is one of my favorite scenes in Heaven's Feel, if not the entirety of Fate Stay Night, relegated to now being a part of a montage?
Why? Why did you do this, Ufotable? This was an important scene to give both Shiro and the audience a newfound admiration of Ilya as a character, showing a down-to-earth side of herself where she sings a German song as they walk home after buying groceries at the market. That's expressive and beautiful, all in equal measure. And to make us understand just how much humanity she has, despite not being truly human. Now it's just a throwaway moment in a montage that doesn't even have dialogue? Are you shitting me?
Just for everything I really like about Lost Butterfly, and I really do think it's a great film at the end of the day, it's only by seeing it on its own terms that I can say that. The more I think about it, the more flaws I find in it, and realize that the merits it has stem more from its source material than what it adds or deletes. Much of the good already existed in the novel. Some things like the castle sequence, the new scene they added with Taiga, or even the big magical mushroom cloud explosion filled fight with Salter are huge pluses. The castle sequence in particular is a very unique addition as it replaced the nightmare scene from this portion of the plot in exchange, and it works really well as a pull the curtain sort of moment that takes a metaphorical approach to revealing Sakura to be the shadow, while with her eating people and all. The novel version of these scenes was more direct, but worked by taking full advantage of its text-based medium with strong descriptions and horrific prose that gave the reader a true sense of shock and discomfort. It's horrifying. While the film version works by being one giant visual metaphor that subverts expectations, whether you've read the novel or not. You even get imagery in the background that help to reinforce an unsettling direction despite the fantastical and cheery look to it all, before pulling the aforementioned curtains, and everyone in the theater I saw this in was just really fucking shocked. It was amazing. It really was freaking awesome, and it's still a great scene upon multiple viewings. But as much as the core story is intact and some of the additions or re-engineering efforts take advantage of the anime medium for the better, at what cost did it take to make this fit?
Everything.
No, not everything. But just because the core story is intact, that doesn't overlook that a sizable portion of the proverbial vanilla cream filling was taken out, if not due to runtime, might have been done to fulfill whatever ambition Ufotable has with this material. Though some moments from the novel can be inconsequentially omitted or reworked, others have a stronger impact and would have made the experience more whole if they were able to leave said material in. The fact they managed to make these films work as well as they do is a feat that should be commended, even if it could be better. To talk more about the films when Spring Song still isn't released as of the writing of this has been mental acrobatics, and I'm not entirely confident I managed to stick the landing without spoiling everything that Spring Song should bring up. I've bitched plenty in this review, but I only do so when comparing the novel. These are fine to even great films if you don't know the story in its original form, and I do mean it. They have nice surprises for pre-established fans. Newer fans will get a kick out of them on their own terms. The core story is carried through just fine despite the reworked and omitted content. The drama kicks into high gear in Lost Butterfly in a way that's such a refresher after Presage Flower set everything up. And from what has been shown of Spring Song in trailers, it's bound to be such a wild fucking ride that I want to pre-order my tickets as soon as they're available in the US. Though considering the state of affairs since writing this, It's gonna take a while. I can only imagine what the full Ryder versus Salter fight will be like with Ufotable at the helm. It'll probably blow us away more than a hydrogen bomb. But make no mistake, they're flawed films if my words haven't already made it clear. And the remix approach leaves much to be desired for visual novel fans such as I. And I still can't get over that one of my favorite scenes in all of Fate/stay night is a tiny fucking bit in a montage. But that shouldn't drive people away. The remix approach may have ups and downs, but the merits shine plenty to make the experience worthwhile. I do recommend Heaven's Feel, Presage Flower, and Lost Butterfly, but only if you accept them on their terms, not yours.